The morning sun peeked through the tall windows of the Grand Plaza Hotel as Thomas Johnson adjusted his dark blue tie in the mirror. At 32 years old, he had achieved everything he had dreamed of. A successful career as a cardiologist at Memorial Hospital, a beautiful home in the suburbs, and now he was about to marry the love of his life. The hotel lobby buzzed with early morning activity. Hotel staff moved quickly, carrying fresh flowers and arranging chairs for the afternoon ceremony. Thomas smiled as he watched them work. He had chosen the Grand Plaza Hotel not just because it was the best venue in the city, but also because it held special meaning. This was where he had first met Maria, 2 years ago, at a medical conference. Dr. Johnson called out Marcus, his best friend since college days. Marcus walked across the lobby, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Man, I can't believe you're finally getting married. Remember when you said you'd never have time for dating because of medical school?" Thomas laughed, taking one of the coffee cups. "Life has a funny way of proving us wrong," he said, thinking about how Maria had changed his entire world. The rest of Thomas's groomsmen arrived one by one. His younger brother Michael, who had flown in from California, came carrying several garment bags. Behind him walked James and David, Thomas's friends from his hospital residency days. All of them wore matching gray suits, just as Thomas and Maria had planned. "Mom's already crying," Michael told Thomas with a grin. "She's up in room 405 with Maria and the bridesmaids. That's trying to calm her down, but you know how she gets at weddings." Thomas felt his heart warm at the thought. His parents had driven 6 hours from their home in Virginia to be here. They had always supported him, from his dream of becoming a doctor to his relationship with Maria. Their approval meant everything to him. The hotel's grand ballroom was slowly transforming into a wedding venue. White and silver decorations hung from the ceiling, and rows of chairs were being set up to accommodate their 200 guests. The flower arrangements, featuring white roses and blue hydrangeas, added elegance to every corner. "Sir, where would you like the band to set up?" asked Sarah, the hotel's event coordinator. She had been helpful throughout the planning process, making sure everything was perfect for their big day. Thomas pointed to the far end of the ballroom. "That corner would be perfect," he said. "Maria wants enough space in the middle for dancing." As the morning progressed, more family members arrived. Maria's parents, who had come all the way from Puerto Rico, were checking into their rooms. Her cousins, aunts, and uncles filled the hotel lobby with excited chatter in a mix of English and Spanish. Thomas checked his phone. There were dozens of messages from well-wishers, but he was looking for updates from Maria. She had sent him a heart emoji 20 minutes ago, and he couldn't stop smiling thinking about how, in just a few hours, they would be husband and wife. "Everything's on schedule," Marcus said, looking at his checklist. As best man, he was taking his duties very seriously. "The photographer will be here in an hour, the cake is being delivered at 11, and the guests will start arriving at 1. Thomas nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He had performed countless heart surgeries, but somehow, this day made his own heart beat faster than ever. "I'm going to check on the guest rooms one more time," Thomas told his friends. "Make sure everyone has what they need." As he walked toward the elevator, Thomas couldn't help but feel proud. He had worked hard to get where he was, one of the youngest cardiologists at Memorial Hospital, respected by his colleagues, and now about to marry an amazing woman who shared his passions and dreams. Little did Thomas know that his perfect morning was about to take an unexpected turn. As he pressed the elevator button, he didn't notice Patricia Whitman, the hotel's manager, watching him with disapproving eyes from behind her desk. The day he had planned so carefully was about to face a challenge that would test not just his patience, but the very values of everyone present. Patricia Whitman sat at her desk, her lips pressed into a thin line as she watched Thomas and his groomsmen walk through the hotel lobby. She had worked at the Grand Plaza Hotel for 15 years, and something about this wedding party made her uncomfortable. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped rapidly on her desktop computer as she pulled up the day's events. "This can't be right," she muttered to herself, looking at the Johnson-Rodriguez wedding reservation. The booking was for the hotel's largest ballroom, with a full catering package and multiple room reservations. Patricia stood up, smoothing her gray business suit, and marched toward the group of men. "Excuse me," she called out sharply, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "There seems to be some confusion about your presence here." Thomas turned around, his friendly smile meeting Patricia's cold stare. Is there a problem? He asked politely, holding his coffee cup. Yes, there is, Patricia said, her voice getting louder. I'm the manager here, and I don't recall approving any such grand reservation for today. Are you sure you're at the right hotel? Marcus stepped forward, confusion clear on his face. What do you mean? We've been planning this for months. Everything's been paid for. Other hotel guests began to notice the commotion. An elderly couple stopped their conversation to watch. A family checking in at the front desk turned their heads. Sarah, the event coordinator, was setting up flowers nearby and froze in place, her eyes widening at Patricia's tone. I find it hard to believe, Patricia continued, looking directly at Thomas, that you could afford our premium wedding package. Perhaps there's been some mistake with the payment. Thomas's brother Michael pulled out his phone and started recording. He had seen situations like this before and knew exactly what was happening. Thomas remained calm, though his hands tightened slightly around his coffee cup. Ma'am, Thomas said quietly, I have all the confirmation emails and receipt of payment right here on my phone. Would you like to see them? Patricia waved her hand dismissively. Anyone can fake emails these days. I'm going to need to see the original credit card used for payment and proper identification. We get a lot of attempts at fraud here. By now, several hotel staff members had stopped their work to watch the scene unfold. Sarah, the event coordinator, rushed to her office to get the paperwork, her face showing clear distress at the situation. This is ridiculous, James, one of the groomsmen said. Dr. Johnson is a respected cardiologist. He's performed surgery on half the people in this city. Patricia's face reddened. Security, she called out loudly. We have a situation here. Two security guards approached hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable with the scene. They could see the wedding decorations being set up and the properly dressed group of men who showed no signs of causing trouble. These people, Patricia said, pointing at Thomas and his groomsmen, cannot prove they have a legitimate reservation. They need to leave immediately. Thomas took a deep breath and pulled out his hospital ID badge along with his driver's license. I'm Dr. Thomas Johnson. I booked this venue 6 months ago. We've paid in full. My fiancée is upstairs getting ready with her bridesmaids. 200 guests will be arriving in a few hours. More phones had come out, recording the incident. A young woman in the lobby was already typing furiously on her phone, likely sharing the story on social media. The security guards exchanged uncertain glances, not moving to act on Patricia's demands. Sarah finally returned, running with a stack of papers. Ms. Whitman, I have all the documentation right here. The Johnson-Rodriguez wedding is fully approved and paid for. I handled it myself. But Patricia wasn't listening. She had already pulled out her own phone. I'm calling the police, she announced loudly. This is clearly an attempted scam. Marcus put his hand on Thomas's shoulder, trying to keep his friend calm. Michael kept recording, making sure to capture every word and gesture. The other groomsmen formed a protective circle around Thomas, who stood there, still dignified despite the humiliation being thrown at him. Upstairs, unaware of the chaos unfolding in the lobby, Maria was getting her makeup done, dreaming of the perfect wedding day she had planned. The day that Patricia Whitman was now trying her best to destroy. The tension in the Grand Plaza Hotel lobby grew thicker as more people gathered to watch the scene unfold. Thomas Johnson stood calmly, still holding his ID and phone with the wedding receipts, while Patricia Whitman's face grew redder with each passing moment. The police are on their way, Patricia announced loudly, putting her phone back in her pocket. Until they arrive, I want all of you to step outside. Sarah, the event coordinator, stepped between Patricia and Thomas. Her hands were shaking as she held up the official hotel documents. Ms. Whitman, please look at these papers. Everything is in order. Dr. Johnson has paid $45,000 for the complete wedding package. Patricia snatched the papers from Sarah's hands and barely glanced at them. These could easily be forged. I know what kind of people try to scam high-end hotels like ours. Michael, still recording everything on his phone, spoke up. What exactly do you mean by what kind of people, Ms. Whitman? His voice was steady but firm. Before Patricia could answer, the elevator doors opened. Mrs. Johnson, Thomas's mother, stepped out wearing a beautiful blue dress. She had come down to check on the flower arrangements but stopped short when she saw the crowd in the lobby. Thomas, what's going on? she asked, hurrying to her son's side. Mom, please go back upstairs, Thomas said gently. We're handling a small misunderstanding. But Patricia turned her attention to Mrs. Johnson. Are you with these people? Everyone claiming to be part of this supposed wedding needs to leave immediately. Mrs. Johnson drew herself up to her full height. As a retired school principal, she had dealt with her fair share of difficult people. I am Dr. Johnson's mother, and I demand to speak to your supervisor immediately. I am the supervisor, Patricia shouted, her voice echoing through the lobby. And I'm trying to protect our hotel from obvious scammers. By now, several videos of the incident were already spreading on social media. Hotel guests were sharing the story in real time, with captions like "Racist hotel manager tries to stop doctor's wedding" and "Karen attacks black wedding party at Grand Plaza." Marcus checked his phone and whispered to Thomas, "Bro, this is going viral. Hashtag Grand Plaza Karen is already trending." Thomas nodded but kept his focus on trying to resolve the situation peacefully. "Ms. Whitman, I understand you have concerns. How about we go to your office and verify everything properly? We don't need to do this in the lobby." "There's nothing to verify," Patricia snapped. "This hotel has standards. We don't just let anyone walk in and claim they have a wedding booked." The two security guards looked increasingly uncomfortable. One of them, an older man named Bill, finally spoke up. "Ms. Whitman, I was here when Dr. Johnson and his fiancée did their final walkthrough last week. They're legitimate guests." Patricia spun around to face Bill. "Are you questioning my authority? I'll have you fired." Just then, more elevator doors opened. This time, it was Maria's father, Mr. Rodriguez, a distinguished-looking businessman in his 60s. He had heard the commotion from upstairs and came to investigate. "¿Qué está pasando aquí?" he asked, then switched to English. "What's happening to my daughter's wedding?" Patricia's eyes widened as she recognized Mr. Rodriguez. He was a well-known real estate developer whose company often booked conferences at the hotel. She had personally handled his business meetings before, but hadn't made the connection with the Rodriguez name on the wedding booking. "Mr. Rodriguez," she stammered, her confident demeanor cracking slightly. "You're part of this wedding?" "Of course I am," he said firmly. "Thomas is marrying my daughter Maria. What is the meaning of this disruption?" The situation had reached a boiling point. Hotel guests were filming from every angle, social media was exploding with updates, and the lobby had become packed with onlookers. Through it all, Thomas maintained his composure, though the pain and humiliation were visible in his eyes. Suddenly, the hotel's front doors burst open. Everyone turned to see who was entering, expecting the police Patricia had called. Instead, a tall man in an expensive suit walked in quickly, his face stern. It was Richard Chen, the Grand Plaza Hotel's general manager, who had been called by multiple staff members about the unfolding situation. The real confrontation was about to begin, and Patricia Whitman's world was about to come crashing down. Richard Chen, the general manager, surveyed the scene before him with growing horror. In his 20 years of hotel management, he had never seen anything like this. The lobby of his prestigious hotel was packed with people holding up phones. His head manager was red-faced and shouting, and one of their most expensive wedding packages was on the verge of becoming a public relations nightmare. "What is going on here?" Mr. Chen's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Everyone fell silent. Patricia Whitman's face suddenly changed from angry to nervous. "Mr. Chen, I was just protecting our hotel from..." "From what, Ms. Whitman?" Mr. Chen interrupted, walking toward the group. "From a respected doctor and his wedding party who paid in full 6 months ago. From Mr. Rodriguez, one of our most valued business clients." Thomas Johnson stepped forward, still holding his ID and documentation. "Sir, I'm Dr. Johnson. My fiancée and I booked our wedding." "Dr. Johnson," Mr. Chen said warmly, extending his hand. "I know exactly who you are. I personally approved your wedding package when Sarah told me a prominent cardiologist had chosen our venue." Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. But I thought." "You thought what, exactly?" Mr. Chen's voice was ice-cold now. "Please, Ms. Whitman, finish that sentence. I'm very interested in hearing what you thought." The lobby remained silent except for the soft sounds of phone cameras recording. Sarah, the event coordinator, handed Mr. Chen the complete wedding file, including all payments and arrangements. Dr. Johnson, Mr. Chen said, turning back to Thomas, I cannot begin to express how deeply sorry I am for this incident. Your wedding is not only confirmed, but is one of our most prestigious events this month. Mrs. Johnson stepped forward, her voice shaking with controlled anger. Mr. Chen, my son and his fiancée chose your hotel because of its excellent reputation, but what we've experienced today. You're absolutely right, Mr. Chen said. He turned to face the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed today does not represent the values of the Grand Plaza Hotel. We celebrate love and welcome all couples who choose to share their special day with us. Patricia tried one last time to defend herself. I was just following protocol for suspicious. Suspicious? Mr. Rodriguez interrupted, his voice booming. My daughter is marrying a doctor. Everything was paid for months ago, and we have all the documentation. What exactly was suspicious, Ms. Whitman? More hotel staff had gathered now, including the entire wedding coordination team. They looked embarrassed and worried, knowing this incident could affect their jobs and the hotel's reputation. Mr. Chen turned to the security guards. Bill, please escort Ms. Whitman to my office and ensure she stays there. Then he faced Patricia directly. We will discuss your immediate suspension pending an investigation. As Bill led a stunned Patricia away, she finally seemed to realize the magnitude of what she had done. Her face turned pale as she saw dozens of phones following her exit, knowing her actions would soon be seen by millions online. Dr. Johnson, Mr. Chen said, please allow me to make this right. I'm upgrading your entire wedding party to our premium suites at no additional cost. All spa services will be complimentary for the bride, groom, and both families, and we will reduce your total bill by 50%. Thomas shook his head. Mr. Chen, we don't want special treatment. We just wanted to have our wedding in peace. This isn't special treatment, Dr. Johnson. This is the bare minimum of what we owe you for this horrible experience. Mr. Chen turned to Sarah. Please ensure everything for the ceremony is perfect. I will personally oversee all arrangements. Slowly, the crowd began to disperse. Michael stopped his recording, but saved everything carefully. Marcus checked his phone and whistled softly. The videos were already reaching hundreds of thousands of views on social media. Mrs. Johnson hugged her son tightly. Are you okay, baby? She whispered. Thomas hugged her back, his voice tired but steady. I'm fine, Mom, but someone needs to tell Maria what's happening. She's still upstairs getting ready, thinking everything is perfect. Mr. Rodriguez put his hand on Thomas's shoulder. I will talk to my daughter. She needs to know that her future husband handled this situation with dignity and strength. As the families headed toward the elevators, Mr. Chen began damage control. He knew that within hours, this incident would be national news. The Grand Plaza Hotel would never be the same, and Patricia Whitman's actions had ensured that her own life was about to change dramatically as well. Within 3 hours of the incident at the Grand Plaza Hotel, the world had witnessed Patricia Whitman's actions from multiple angles. Michael Johnson's original video, titled Racist Karen Tries to Stop My Brother's Wedding, had already reached 2 million views on TikTok. In the hotel's bridal suite, Maria Rodriguez sat on an elegant white couch, tears rolling down her perfectly made-up face as she watched the videos on her phone. Her father had just finished telling her everything that had happened downstairs. I can't believe this, Maria whispered, watching Thomas handle the situation with such grace. Her bridesmaids gathered around her, offering comfort and support. Meanwhile, in the hotel's main office, Richard Chen, the general manager, was dealing with a publicity nightmare. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. News stations from across the country wanted statements. The hotel's social media accounts were flooded with angry comments. Sir, his assistant said, rushing in with a tablet, CNN wants to do a live interview. The story is trending #1 on Twitter with hashtag Grand Plaza Karen and hashtag Der Johnson Wedding. More videos kept surfacing. A teenage guest had captured the moment from the second-floor balcony, showing a perfect view of Patricia's aggressive body language. Another video from a business traveler included Patricia's comment about what kind of people try to scam the hotel. Celebrity tweets started popping up. Famous actors, athletes, and musicians shared the videos with comments supporting Thomas and Maria. This accomplished doctor had to prove himself worthy of his own wedding. In 2024. Disgusting. Hashtag Grand Plaza Karen. Watch how this man keeps his dignity while facing pure racism. Dr. Johnson, you're a better person than most. Hashtag Dr. Johnson wedding. Local news vans began arriving outside the hotel. Reporters set up their equipment, hoping to catch interviews with anyone involved. The hotel's phone lines were jammed with calls from people canceling future reservations in protest. In the groom's suite, Thomas sat with his groomsmen, trying to focus on his upcoming wedding rather than the viral storm. Marcus showed him a message from their old college friend who now worked at the New York Times. "They want to do a feature story on you, bro," Marcus said. "Not just about today, but about your journey to becoming a cardiologist and breaking barriers." Thomas shook his head. "Today is about Maria and me, nothing else." Michael's phone buzzed with another notification. "Oh man, someone found Patricia's old social media posts. It's getting worse for her." He showed the others screenshots of Patricia's past racist comments on various platforms, some dating back several years. In the hotel's security office, the guards watched more footage from their cameras. "She's done this before," Bill said, remembering past incidents he witnessed but hadn't reported. Just never to someone who could fight back like Dr. Johnson. The Grand Plaza's parent company issued an emergency statement. "We are horrified by the discriminatory actions witnessed at our Grand Plaza location. The employee in question has been suspended pending investigation. We stand firmly against racism and discrimination of any kind. We are in direct contact with Dr. Johnson and his family to make this right." Former hotel employees began sharing their own stories about Patricia online. A black former waitress wrote about being fired by Patricia for not meeting appearance standards. A Hispanic bellboy shared how Patricia had always given him the worst shifts. Maria's mother knocked on the bridal suite door. "Maija," she said softly, "the makeup artist is here to fix your makeup. Remember, in a few hours, you'll be Mrs. Johnson. Don't let that horrible woman steal your joy." Maria nodded, wiping her tears. "Is Thomas okay?" "More than okay," her mother smiled. "He's worried about you. That man loves you so much. He stayed calm through all of this just to give you your perfect wedding." Outside the hotel, protesters began gathering with signs. "Love greater than Haiti. KRNKANTSTOPLOV. Stand with Dr. Johnson." Local business owners showed their support. The cafe across the street put up a sign. "Congratulations, Dr. and Mrs. Johnson. Love wins." Other wedding vendors started canceling their partnerships with the Grand Plaza Hotel. As evening approached, the story showed no signs of slowing down. But inside the hotel, two families focused on what really mattered: the love between Thomas and Maria, and the celebration that would go on despite Patricia Whitman's best efforts to stop it. The viral storm had exposed an ugly truth about ongoing discrimination, but it had also revealed the overwhelming support for love in the face of hatred. Patricia Whitman sat alone in her living room, staring at her TV in horror. Every major news channel was showing the videos from the Grand Plaza Hotel. Her face, twisted with anger and prejudice, was being broadcast across the nation. The caption below read, "Hotel manager suspended after racist attempt to stop doctor's wedding." Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing with messages, most from unknown numbers calling her horrible names. She had already deleted all her social media accounts, but it was too late. The internet had found everything: her old racist Facebook posts, complaints from former employees, and even pictures of her at past protests against diversity initiatives. "This is a disaster," she whispered to herself, jumping as her doorbell rang. Outside, she could see reporters waiting with cameras. They had found her address. Meanwhile, back at the Grand Plaza Hotel, Richard Chen was in an emergency meeting with the hotel's corporate lawyers. The massive conference room was tense as they reviewed the incident's legal implications. "The videos are absolutely clear," said Janet Martinez, the head lawyer. "This is a clear case of discrimination. Dr. Johnson would have every right to sue us." Richard nodded, looking tired. "What about Patricia's employment history? Did we miss any warning signs?" Another lawyer opened a thick file. "We found 12 complaints against her in the past 5 years, all from minority employees or guests. Most were quietly resolved or ignored by previous management." "How did we let this go on for so long?" Richard asked, rubbing his temples. His phone buzzed with a new message. The hotel's booking system had recorded over 50 cancellations for future events. Major companies were pulling their conference reservations. The hotel's reputation was in free fall. Across town, at the local news station, reporter Sarah Chen, no relation to Richard, was preparing for her evening broadcast. "We have breaking news about the Grand Plaza incident," she began. "Former employees have come forward with shocking allegations against Patricia Whitman." The screen showed interviews with past hotel workers. "She always gave the worst shifts to minority staff," said one former bellhop. "I was fired because my natural hair didn't meet her standards," shared a former receptionist. "She told me my accent would scare away high-end customers," revealed a former waiter. Back at the hotel, the Human Resources Department was drowning in old complaints that had previously been buried. The head of HR, David Thompson, looked devastated as he read through them. "We failed these people," he said to his team. "Every time we ignored a complaint, we let Patricia think her behavior was acceptable." In the hotel's luxury suite, Thomas's mother was on the phone with their family lawyer. "No," she said firmly, "we don't want to sue the hotel. Thomas and Maria just want to focus on their wedding. But we do want changes made." Patricia's neighbors watched as more news vans parked on their street. Mrs. Jenkins, who lived next door, shook her head sadly. "I always knew Patricia was troubled," she told a reporter. "She once called the police on a black family having a birthday party in their own backyard." The corporate office of Grand Plaza Hotels released another statement. "Effective immediately, Patricia Whitman's employment with Grand Plaza Hotels has been terminated. We are implementing mandatory diversity training across all our locations. We are also creating a new position for a Director of Diversity and Inclusion. We acknowledge our failure to address previous complaints and are committed to making systemic changes." Patricia's phone rang again. This time it was her sister in Ohio. "Patty," her sister said, "Mom's in tears. Your nephew's college withdrew his admission after someone connected him to you. Your actions are hurting the whole family." For the first time, Patricia began to understand the true consequences of her behavior. It wasn't just her job she had lost. Her reputation was destroyed. Her future employment prospects were ruined. Even her family was suffering. The doorbell rang again. This time it was a delivery person with an envelope. Inside was an official letter from the Grand Plaza Hotel's legal team, outlining the terms of her termination. No severance pay, no references, no chance to appeal. As evening fell, Patricia watched more news coverage of the incident. But now the stories were shifting focus. Instead of just showing her actions, they were highlighting Thomas and Maria's love story, their professional achievements, their community service, their dignity in facing discrimination. Patricia Whitman, once a powerful hotel manager, had become a national symbol of racism's ugly persistence, and her attempt to stop one wedding had instead sparked a nationwide conversation about discrimination in the service industry. The consequences of her actions were just beginning to unfold. As the sun began to set over the Grand Plaza Hotel, the wedding ceremony that Patricia Whitman had tried so hard to stop was about to begin. The grand ballroom had been transformed into something magical. White roses and blue hydrangeas decorated every corner, and soft lighting created a warm, welcoming atmosphere. 200 guests filled the seats, many of them still discussing the morning's events. But their anger at Patricia was now replaced with excitement for the couple. Local news crews waited quietly outside, respecting the family's wish for privacy during the ceremony. Richard Chen, the general manager, personally checked every detail. "Everything must be perfect," he told his staff. "This couple deserves nothing but the best." He had arranged for extra security to ensure no unwanted visitors or reporters could disturb the celebration. At 6:00 p.m., the wedding music began. Thomas stood at the altar, looking handsome in his black tuxedo. His best man, Marcus, stood beside him, giving him a supportive pat on the shoulder. The morning's ugliness seemed far away now. Then the doors opened, and Maria appeared in her white dress. The guests gasped. She looked stunning, her makeup perfectly redone after her earlier tears, her smile bright enough to light up the room. Her father, Mr. Rodriguez, walked proudly beside her. "Look at our boy," Mrs. Johnson whispered to her husband, wiping happy tears from her eyes. "Standing there so strong after everything that happened today." The ceremony was beautiful in its simplicity. The couple had written their own vows, and their words seemed even more meaningful after the day's events. "Maria," Thomas said, his voice clear and strong, "today showed me once again why I love you so much. When you heard what happened, you didn't want to change venues or cancel. You said our love was stronger than hate. You were right." Maria's voice shook slightly as she spoke. "Thomas, you showed everyone today what kind of man you are. You faced ugliness with dignity and grace. I'm not just marrying a brilliant doctor, I'm marrying a man of incredible character. I'm proud to become your wife." As they exchanged rings, someone in the back started singing "All You Need Is Love" by the Beatles. Soon, the entire room joined in. It wasn't planned, but it was perfect. "By the power vested in me," the minister said, smiling broadly, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." The ballroom erupted in cheers and applause as Thomas and Maria shared their first kiss as a married couple. The celebration that followed was extraordinary. During the reception, surprise video messages played on large screens. Famous actors, athletes, and musicians who had seen the viral videos had sent their congratulations. The governor called to personally apologize for what happened and to congratulate the newlyweds. Local businesses had joined in too. The famous bakery down the street sent an extra wedding cake as a gift. Florists had donated additional arrangements. A popular local band showed up to play for free during the reception. "See," Maria said to Thomas as they danced their first dance, "our wedding became even more special. All that hate just brought out more love." The hotel staff worked extra hard, providing perfect service with genuine smiles. Many of them personally apologized to the couple, even though they hadn't done anything wrong. Sarah, the event coordinator who had stood up to Patricia, received special thanks from both families. "You were one of the first to speak up," Thomas told her. "That took courage." As the evening continued, social media was flooded with wedding photos and videos, but this time they showed something beautiful: a couple's love triumphing over prejudice. The hashtag changed from hashtag Grand Plaza Karen to hashtag Love Wins at Grand Plaza. Near midnight, Thomas and Maria left the ballroom under a shower of rose petals. Their guests lined up, holding electric candles that lit up the grand staircase. In their luxury suite, they found hundreds of cards and messages from supporters around the world. "What a day," Maria said, sitting down and taking off her shoes. "I don't think anyone will ever forget our wedding." Thomas smiled, loosening his bow tie. "They tried to stop our wedding," he said. "But instead, they made it unforgettable. And you know what? Maybe our story will help change things. Maybe the next couple won't have to go through what we did." Outside their window, the city lights twinkled. The same social media that had exposed Patricia's racism was now spreading a different message. Love is stronger than hate, and sometimes the worst moments can bring out the best in humanity. 6 months after the wedding that made national headlines, life had changed dramatically for everyone involved. The viral incident at the Grand Plaza Hotel had sparked more than just temporary outrage. It had created lasting change. Patricia Whitman sat in a small office, facing a group of corporate executives. But this time, she wasn't being fired. She was sharing her story as part of a nationwide training program on workplace discrimination. "I was wrong," Patricia said, her voice humble and sincere. "I lost everything because of my prejudice: my job, my reputation, my friends. But more importantly, I almost ruined what should have been the happiest day of two wonderful people's lives." The past months had been hard for Patricia. After weeks of hiding from public shame, she had finally sought help. She attended counseling sessions and joined diversity education programs. Her transformation wasn't quick or easy, but it was genuine. Meanwhile, the Grand Plaza Hotel had become a symbol of positive change in the hospitality industry. Richard Chen, now promoted to regional director, had implemented new policies that other hotels were copying. "Every employee must complete diversity training," he explained to a reporter from Time magazine. "We've hired staff from different backgrounds, and our new director of diversity and inclusion is making sure we never repeat past mistakes." The hotel's booking rates had recovered and even improved. Couples specifically requested to get married in the same ballroom where Thomas and Maria had celebrated their love. The spot where Patricia had confronted Thomas now had a small plaque that read, "Love Wins." Sarah, the event coordinator who had stood up to Patricia, was now the hotel's head of special events. That day changed everything, she said during a staff meeting. We learned that staying silent about discrimination makes us part of the problem. Dr. Thomas Johnson and his wife Maria had become unintentional advocates for change. Their story was being taught in hospitality management schools as an example of how not to treat guests and how to properly handle discrimination. One morning, Thomas arrived at his hospital office to find a letter from a young black medical student. Dear Dr. Johnson, your wedding story inspired me. When people told me I couldn't become a doctor, I remembered how you handled that hotel manager with dignity. Thank you for showing us that we can overcome prejudice with grace. Maria, now a successful pediatrician herself, often spoke at community events about their experience. What happened at our wedding was terrible, she would say, but look at all the good that came from it. Sometimes the worst moments bring the best changes. The couple had even received an unexpected letter from Patricia Whitman. Dear Dr. and Mrs. Johnson, I know an apology can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that you changed my life. Your dignity in the face of my hatred showed me a better way. I'm now working to help others overcome their prejudices. Thank you for not letting my actions destroy your special day and for unintentionally helping me become a better person. Thomas and Maria chose to forgive Patricia, understanding that real change starts with acceptance and redemption. The Grand Plaza Hotel's parent company had created a scholarship program in the Johnsons' name, providing opportunities for minority students in hospitality management. The first class of scholars was preparing to graduate. Bill, the security guard who had spoken up during the incident, was promoted to head of security. He made sure his team was trained to recognize and stop discrimination before it escalated. 1 year after the wedding, Thomas and Maria returned to the Grand Plaza Hotel to celebrate their anniversary. The staff welcomed them warmly, and Richard Chen had preserved their wedding suite exactly as it had been. Look at this, Maria said, showing Thomas her phone. The latest viral video from the hotel showed a same-sex couple celebrating their wedding in the grand ballroom, with staff going above and beyond to make their day special. Thomas smiled, holding his wife's hand. 1 year ago, we thought our wedding was ruined. Instead, it became a catalyst for change. The story of the Grand Plaza Karen was no longer just about racism and hate. It had become a story of transformation, forgiveness, and progress. Patricia's attempt to stop a wedding had failed, but it had succeeded in starting important conversations about discrimination and change. As Thomas and Maria celebrated their anniversary, they knew their love hadn't just survived hatred, it had helped change hearts and minds. Their wedding day, which could have been remembered for prejudice, was now celebrated as the day love won and transformation began.